There is no neighborhood in the city that is immune to this.
I've treated doctors, lawyers, judges, police officers that are addicted to heroin and similar drugs.
Unless we help people out when they want to get out, people stay stuck in active addiction.
I want to help somebody else out now. I want to try to help somebody that's going through the same thing so they don't have to go through something like that.
We're falling short of helping these people that so desperately need our help.
He's been dead 10 times and been brought back to life. That's scary. But even with that knowledge, those disorders have an incredibly strong hold.
Honestly, it's not worth it. You know, you need to get that help because it's going to be an endless cycle, and I've gone through it. It's a roller coaster. You're going up and down, and if people don't get clean, then they're going to end up just like that.
This is Chronicle Maine's Heroin Epidemic. I'm David Charnes. Can opiate abuse and heroin use be prevented? Right now, Maine lawmakers are hoping their work will pay off, curbing the number of Mainers addicted to pills. That, as teachers try to get an upper hand on the issue. Here's WMTW News 8's Megan Torgerson.
I've heard of people using a couple different doctors.
For recovering addict Jesse Billings, it only took one prescription.
At 17, I got into a car accident, and that was more or less what started it for me when it came to opiates.
Now 22 years old, Billings has more than 100 days sober and far from the only person with a story that started with a prescription and ended in addiction.
Probably up to 1 in 5 people will actually become addicted.
Dr. Christopher Pizzullo, the DHHS chief health officer, says in the face of the deadly opiate epidemic, Maine has increased its role in prevention. Legislatively, a bill enacted in April limits prescriptions both in how many pills are prescribed and how doctors prescribe them, a problem before.
We have a number from 2 years ago that there were 80 million discrete opioid pills prescribed in 1 year to people in Maine. And last year there were 100 million pills prescribed.
The bill also has requirements for continuing education every 2 years, for electronic prescriptions by next July, and limiting the strength of the opioid or benzodiazepine prescribed, rules and fines to change logistics. But it's not limited to that.
But also it's changing the conversation in the state because now it's not like a hidden conversation, it's right out there in the open.
He went to heroin.
Also opening the conversation of prevention are Maine students.
I think just trying to make a change, even though we're 7th graders.
Sarah Salter and her classmates, Celia and Ty, are working to educate their peers at Lyman Moore Middle School about the opioid epidemic in Maine.
It's as big as a deal as smoking. It's as big as a deal as anything else.
What started as a project has now turned into a community effort. A forum, a 5K, and candlelight vigil are all planned. These girls say the pressures of drugs and drug use starts early. They say education is key to prevention.
It only takes like a little bit of a drug to have your life be taken away from you.
Oh, yeah.
A lesson Jesse Billings says he wished he had learned, that education can equal prevention.
I guess every little bit of awareness that anyone gets, they should take seriously and really, really think about.
Megan Torgerson reporting. Those efforts go hand in hand with another aspect of this heroin epidemic, enforcement. Almost everyone agrees that law enforcement can't arrest its way out of the heroin problem, but what is the best path forward after someone is arrested? As WMTW News 8 political reporter Paul Merrill found out, the answer to that question is evolving.
When a new law takes effect in late July, Maine will join a handful of states where police and prosecutors cannot charge people caught with small amounts of drugs with felonies, ever. Unless there are aggravating factors, possession of anything less than 200 milligrams of heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, or pills will be considered a misdemeanor, no matter how many times it happens.
The House accept the majority report.
Democratic State Representative Mark Dion, who spent 12 years as Cumberland County Sheriff, authored the amendment that essentially rolls back the state penalties.
All we did with this amendment is recognize the true nature of addiction.
Dion says it's not about minimizing accountability, it's about minimizing stigma because of the way a felony conviction affects a person's ability to get housing, loans, and work.
I have a problem with turning someone who's 21 years old facing heroin addiction into a felon where when he's 45 will wonder why he's been robbed of his ability to have a normal life.
Relative to Governor LePage thinks taking away an officer's ability to charge someone with a felony robs police of an important tool. Here's what he said at a Lewiston town hall in early May.
What we're trying to do is say you have a choice to get a felony on your record or you can go to the rehab. We want them to go to rehab. We want to get them well.
But the governor's opposition to the change only went so far.
The governor had the opportunity to veto this bill, and he decided not to do that.
Shri Amara Singham is a lawyer with the ACLU of Maine. Her organization pushed for the change to lessen penalties for possession of small amounts of drugs.
Substance use disorders are a public health crisis, not an incarceration problem.
Well, it's all about accountability.
Roy McKinney is director of the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency. While his organization is primarily concerned with drug dealers, McKinney says patrol officers all over Maine routinely see drug users essentially shrug off misdemeanor charges.
Quite frankly, people that are in the throes of addiction, they're just interested in getting out the door, paying the $400 fine, do what they can, and move on.
McKinney says the threat of a felony charge gives police and prosecutors another tool to try to steer addicts towards treatment and recovery programs.
It's a nudge in that direction.
Representative Dion says in reality, threats of harsher penalties don't work.
I think that's a very simplistic view. I mean, it assumes that today I'm considering putting a needle in my vein only because it's a misdemeanor, but tomorrow if it's a felony, I'm less inclined to do that.
Kennebunk Police Chief Bob McKenzie back with us, and joining us, Gina Coggins, who lives in southern Maine and is in long-term recovery, and Stephen Cotro, also a difficult name, who is with the Portland Recovery Community Center. I want to throw it out there. Can we arrest our way out of this?
Absolutely not. It's been shown that what we've been doing for a number of years isn't working. So we need to work collaboratively and work together. This is a societal problem, and law enforcement, as you said, cannot arrest its way out of it. We need to work with these folks, healthcare professionals, the legislators, to come up with these solutions. And I think we're starting to see that now, and it's going to take some time, but I think there is promise there.
Oh, it seems like it's going to take a lot of time. I was in the Cumberland County Jail as a visitor. That sounded sort of wrong, but I was there talking to some inmates who suffer from substance use disorder, and they were talking about how time and time again they're back because this is the way that the system has worked. Is there a way to change how the system's working?
I think offering more treatment and offering more roads out. Because once you're stuck in the cycle, it's often difficult to find a way out. So if there are more options for people to get out, I think they would take it.
So is it getting those treatment options, is it a money issue? Is it a government issue? What is the problem with why are there only 178 state-funded beds in this state?
I don't have an answer.
Tough question for you.
Well, I'm not in charge of it. If I were in charge of it,
there would be much more.
There would be many more.
And Gina, we brought you on this panel because you were in the cycle. You were in this. What broke the cycle for you?
I think rehabilitation, for me, hitting bottom to the point where my family wouldn't talk to me anymore. They were done bailing me out of jail. All that I had left was a shelter in Portland to go to, or the back of my car. And that's what it took for me. But then having people reach out and offer their hope as individuals that recognize me as a human being and not a criminal. I think that was the biggest point for me, is just having someone look at me as a human and not as someone that was just released from jail. Yeah. I think the whole rehabilitation part is what is missing. People come into jail with no shoes on, no shirt on, and leave that way 6 months later, and then what? They go back to the same life because they aren't given any tools. You don't know what you don't know.
And I think it's important to point out, not everybody does go to jail. People do get arrested. There are certainly people who are using, watching this or might watch this who have never seen, are not under the scope of law enforcement for this. So Is there a way, do you think, to have more of an experience that Gina had versus throwing people in jail?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to, and you folks in the media helping us educate society with what is going on so we can collaborate and come up with new ideas. There are, I believe, federal dollars that are going to come our way for treatment. The treatment is what our folks need. As Gina said, many of these folks are not criminals. They're sick and they need that treatment. So
one of the things that we've talked about at the chief and I have been at several forums talking about this. Both of you, I know, have been on Channel 8 talking about this. One of the things we discuss is education and how preventative measures are mixed into that. I think Aaliyah in that story that Megan did said it best. She said, I see smoking commercials, why don't I see opioid commercials? Gina, do you think that would have helped you before you started using?
I started using opiates because other substances stopped working for me. And I honestly think, yeah, if someone that was in recovery and shared their experience, maybe it would have, maybe it could have.
Steve, what do you think?
I think that early intervention, but not at the ages that we're currently doing it. I think that there are a lot of people that young people that I encounter every day that tell me that their active use started at 12 and 13 years old. So if we're going to do prevention, we have to go for younger than that, and really be honest about addiction, about use, and not scare tactics, not the realities of what addiction really is.
And do you think that there needs to be more to show that, well, we've already agreed that there needs to be more to show that this is an illness and not a crime. How do we even bridge that, or have we already bridged that as a state?
Well, I think we're beginning to hear about it. You're hearing these stories, you're seeing these stories, and yes, there's a lot of successes and there's still certainly some failures, but I think we're getting back, better at it as time goes. So again, I think it's positive. We're going in the right direction. It's going to take a while to get there, though.
Well, everyone at this table, all you three I know are doing great work out there. Gina, I know you've taken your story and you really want to get out there and talk about it, which I personally think is the key to the education thing, and I think that you two would agree. So thank you for speaking out about it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, coming up, are you ever cured from substance use disorder?
Everybody feels the urgency. Nobody can feel complacent about this. We do feel there's hope. There is optimism.
In just 2 minutes, we will introduce you to a Maine man who has broken the stigma surrounding addiction. Stay with us.